What is up, YouTube, and welcome to this The Boys episodes 1 to 3 breakdown. I was massively hyped for this show to return, as Season 1 was one of the most refreshing comic book adaptations since Deadpool in 2016. Season 2 is no exception, and absolutely builds upon the ridiculous nature of the first season, and the characters get even more ramped up, with more gore and crazy moments. The first 3 episodes are out now on Amazon Prime, with the rest releasing weekly. I much prefer this rollout as it gives us something to look forward to each week, and I never have been a big fan of whole seasons dropping in one go, which is really to blame on Netflix there. Now, there will be spoilers for the first 3 episodes, so if you haven't seen them and don't want to be spoiled, click off now and come back when you're done. Now, we start off with Giancarlo Esposito, who is playing CEO Stan Edgar, and is negotiating the inclusion of the Seven into the US military after Stillwell's death at the hands of Homelander last season. This is, of course, blamed on the Butcher, and Esposito's role is actually being expanded from last season, as Noir is also in Syria, killing super terrorist, sorry Daddy Homelander, I mean super villains, after Homelander leaked the Compound V around the world. And this is a big basis for the season, as they are using terrorists to embolden the Seven's position, much like what Bush did with invading many countries post 9/11. Now we cut to a memorial for Translucent, who was of course killed last season, with his remains found at sea. This is very much a super funeral, no pun intended, as the blame is put on the Super Cabal El Diablo, as there's nothing in the coffin because his whole body was, found at sea. And we get some funny images of a baby Translucent, but we just see clothes. This reminds me of Michael Jackson's funeral, as we see dodgy merchandise sold out, and Starlight sings a memorial song. In one of the most interesting subplots of the season, the Deep has a major meltdown and is bailed out by Eagle the Archer after saying how lonely the Marianas Trench is when you're in it. Funny, Aquaman had a major scene in there. The Deep in episode 1 wakes up and meets Carol, and both times is given a drink called Fresca, which has to be some sort of mind control device, as every time he's given some new information, he is given this Fresca drink, and more is even bought by Eagle the Archer in episode 3. Now, Carol is actually part of the Church of the Collective, but we will discuss that in a minute. Now, elsewhere, Huey is working with Starlight, even though they are on opposite sides, to get Compound V, and they want to expose it all to the New York Times. This takes her to find a superhero who she was in a team with when she was younger, who can actually regrow his limbs, and has a weird side hustle where he lets people chop him up for money. Now, Starlight actually uses this as blackmail to get him to steal Compound V, as he is a glorified test bunny for Vought. Now, Ashley has actually taken over from Stillwell as the whole PR and kind of being really in charge of the day-to-day, but Homelander is using this as an excuse and using her as really a pawn to actually overcome the stuff he hated last season, which was actually all of the PR and really approving names, and he couldn't really do what he wants, even though he is the head of the Seven, so to speak. He no longer has Stillwell in his way, and Ashley is essentially his puppet there, and the eyes and ears on the corporate level. I really like the metaphor for the corporate being completely uninterested in their workers, and the CEO never really making time for the worker ants, just the way Stan rarely, if ever, actually visits the Seven. Homelander clearly has no interest in Vought as a whole, and wants to actually be his own thing, and I can see him fully trying to make the Seven be their own entity. We also get a brand new member of the team, who is Stormfront. Now, in the comics, Stormfront was a fully fledged Nazi who was made in World War II by Vought, but was let live as she was smuggled into the whole of America and the whole Operation Paperclip, and switched allegiances, just as Vought did. But what is curious here is that in the comics, Stormfront was actually a guy, and a real kind of joke basis on Shazam and Thor. Now, Stormfront is a female, and she's clearly had enough of men ruling the world, and has an interesting take on feminism. Now, Mallory actually asks the Butcher about a superhero called Liberty, and I think this could actually be Stormfront switching roles and identities. In the comics, Stormfront was part of a team called Payback with Soldier Boy, who name-dropped this season by Stan Edgar, and he's actually going to appear in Season 3, which is going to be a big thing there, and is a very kind of funny take on Captain America. Now, interestingly, Eagle the Archer was also on this team, who is a Green Arrow knockoff, and Tech Knight, who was mentioned in Season 1 and 2, were also part of the team. Now, in the comics, Stormfront was actually marketed as a revived Viking, but in reality was a maniac Nazi. So I think that is what is happening here. Now, Frenchie has also inadvertently been involved with smuggling a super terrorist, and in episode 2 it turns out that it is actually Kimiko's brother, the brother you saw in the flashbacks in season 1. Now, if you're like me, you may have actually missed a lot of those two dialogue, because in Prime Video the subtitles don't actually appear automatically. So if you're like me, you had to go back and watch that and actually turn on the subtitles for everything. I don't know why they've done that. But the Butcher wakes up in the middle of the parking lot after last season and has lost all memory of where his wife is, and goes to rejoin his team and meets the deputy director of the CIA, who alludes that Vought are actually using super terrorists to get their own way. However, her head explodes in a gnarly and completely unexpected scene, and I'm kind of gutted that this actress has left the show. Now, they decided to go after the super terrorist who was smuggled in, and Kimiko and her brother have a moment as she chases him, but they capture him and start to try and turn him in to clear their name. Now, weirdly, the Shining Light Liberation Army were also the ones who actually helped this. Now, all the while, A-Train has actually made a full recovery after last season and starts to try to, yes, blackmail Starlight, but she knows all about his naughty doings, and she actually manages to get Compound V, and, well, she wants to use this to take down Vought and expose it. But Stormfront has made it very clear as well, she also wants to be a big player and hates the status quo on the team. Now, A-Train is also trying to blackmail and knows all about the Compound V, but he is very much in Starlight's pocket. The boys have managed to get Kimiko's brother on a boat, ready to extract him to the authorities as he pleads to be let go, only for his sister to say no. And Homelander, all this while again, is visiting Butcher's wife non-stop, and his wife is very much not on board and was not a willing participant in any of this. And he actually tries to train him. However, there's an idea that it could actually be Compound V, and he may not actually be the father, even though he actually has powers there. So that's curious, and that is another subplot which is really, really going to go somewhere at least. Now, interestingly, the Deep is actually handed a tablet by Carol that seemingly had the location of the boys. This was given to her by the first chair of the Church of the Collective. This reveals the location of the boys, but I think it was actually given to her by Stan Edgar, as he has the same information on the same style tablet. So he's clearly behind the whole operation while Vought tanks the stock market. Now, the Deep actually shows up to take out the boys, although his poor whale is killed in a very, very gross moment, and the rest of the 7 actually turn up. And there's no love lost there between Deep and Starlight, as he has actually turned to the Church of the Collective, and he's trying to turn his life around. And even his guild spoke to him, a part which he's very self-conscious about, and Homelander says they're gross, setting him back. So the Deep may actually be, or at least could even turn on Homelander, perhaps. Probably not, though, because Homelander is an absolute beast. Now, Homelander actually comes across Starlight and Huey, and just as they start to kind of have a real moment there where Huey almost dies, the Butcher manages to use Kimiko's brother to take him out of the picture, but obviously he survives. But Stormfront manages to catch up to Kimiko's brother and uses her Thor/Storm style powers, and does not care about killing innocent bystanders, and actually manages to make Homelander's kind of plane massacre last season look like child's play. And she takes out Kimiko's brother, which cements her very much there as the new golden child of the 7 and Stan, setting up a friction and a possible battle between Stormfront and Homelander, as she may kind of align herself with Vought itself, considering that Stan actually appointed her onto the team. So that friction's going to be there moving forward, and I expect Homelander to maybe even call in the boys or use them as a pawn as well to take out Stormfront. But that's it for that video. There will be an episode next week which I will cover. I have got a Mulan video coming out very, very soon, so let me know what else you want on the channel as well. Please drop a like, please subscribe, and I'll see you soon, and goodbye.